All right, so where we left off was that the indicators of there being a breakdown between the free speech between right and left is not a new problem by any means. It shocked the heck right and left wing were very shocked by Donald Trump's victory the day after the election. First studied in Great Britain 100 years ago, but if you go way back in the past, you actually see governments literally restricting free speech. For example, in ancient Rome, it was illegal in some particular junctures to be a Christian, so the federal government essentially made it illegal to speak about your beliefs. So what that meant is that there was a huge portion of the population who felt a certain thing, but they would be punished by law for saying it out loud. So this issue's been very old, or is very old. Let's switch gears for a moment and talk about another very unrelated reason or rationale for freedom of speech. Here you are in a classroom, and these are all the students that are there. This is you. And I've asked this to students in class before, and it generally receives the same unanimous response. If one of the people in the class hated you, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say they hated you and wanted to do harm to you in one way or another, whether it was harm to your reputation or they wanted to physically assault or harm or kill or maim you or something like that, okay? This is you. This is that person. Do you want to know, or would you want to know who that person is? Or would you want them to remain invisible to you? And what you find is that everyone would want to know. I mean, why wouldn't you want to know? So you could pay attention. But here's the deal. If you have a person here who hates you, let's say they hate you because of your race, or they hate you because of your religion, or whatever character, it could be anything. They hate you because you are a New York Knicks fan. It doesn't matter what they hate you for. You'd want to know who that person is. And what's really strange is, if there is a sense of freedom of speech in this classroom, this person will announce themselves. They'll say, I don't like New York Knicks fans. You, as a New York Knicks fan, can then hear this person announcing themselves. And that's pretty useful for you strategically. Now, if you create an atmosphere that freedom of speech, if you create an atmosphere in a classroom where freedom of speech is not nurtured and people don't feel comfortable saying what they're saying, this person here still hates New York Knicks, except you just don't know who they are. So there's something. Now I'm going to tell you my opinion, but my opinion is to be taken with a grain of salt, because I'm only one person who has one limited perspective here. This is a belief that I hold. I'd like people to be able to say what they feel, because if they can say what they feel, we can hear what they have to say. Another thing here, if this person's allowed to say, I hate New York Knicks, there's something called venting that occurs by them speaking their mind and saying thoroughly what they hate about the New York Knicks so much. It lets them feel communicated. It makes them feel like they've said something. It makes them feel like they've communicated. It makes them feel heard. And that has a way of reducing their net frustration. So not only would your enemies be allowed to announce themselves, but their sense of not being able to speak, not feeling heard or communicated with, that sense of feeling goes down. And this person, after venting, becomes less vitriolic or acidic or hateful towards the Knicks, in theory. Okay, it doesn't always work that way. But again, strategically speaking, if you were to look at this as a chessboard, do you want to know where your enemies are? You do have, all of us probably have enemies. Okay, not everyone is compatible, is one way of putting it. Okay, it just doesn't work out that way. There's in a given classroom, there's one person here not likely to be compatible with. So the idea is there a way you can get them to announce themselves and to speak up for themselves? There is at least an argument to be said for that. Switching gears one last time. This is you. These are the people you interact with on a day-to-day basis. This is your mom and the people she speaks to on a day-to-day basis. And this keeps going on and on and on. And mathematically speaking, you're only ever 6 steps removed from anyone in the world. So if you take some random person from, let's say, Kenya, their teacher has an aunt in Chicago. That aunt in Chicago goes to the same church as you do, and then there's you, whatever the case is. A really quick link. And so to make things pretty, what this ends up being is that human beings, by communicating with one another, become synapses. Oops, this is a really bad synapse. Become synapses in a neural cortex, almost like a hive mind or a brain, that these are neurons speaking to one another. Now, let's make this simplified. This are 3 nodes or neural nodes in a hive mind brain. It's this whole intricate nexus that's like a brain up here, but we've just simplified it. Let's take this person in the middle. This person is central or necessary for the communication of these 2 people. If this person is open to speak on any topic, they properly link 2 people together. So if this person is a great communicator and values communication, you have 3 brains linked together, 3 computers linked together into a network. Now, if this person can't speak very well or refuses to speak very well, this system gets shut in half, and now you only have 2 brains linked up. Very natural, just like there can be brain damage to neurons inside of a brain, there can be damage to this person. Let's say they went through a traumatic experience and they no longer want to talk about the Vietnam War. And so this person, when they talk about the Cubs, that idea gets through, and you can speak to the Cubs using 3 computers. If you speak to the Vietnam War, this shuts down and you only get 2. Now, we understand and sympathize with the person who went to Vietnam War, and we're not going to force that person to speak about it if they don't want to, but there's a consequence. That when one person becomes averse or against the free communication of information, they shut down the hive mind. And so look at what happens up here. In theory, one person who is averse to speaking to a topic has a detrimental effect to an increasing fractal of people, and it can shut down that part of the neural hive mind. So when you're dealing with the world, that's North and South America, obviously. Or let's just make it like again, East and Western hemisphere, just like hemispheres of the brain. We want the free flow of information around the globe, so that the more people we can link in to the computer system, the more this turns into one big pulsing hive brain. Okay, so there are things that get in the way. There are tensions that get in the way of the hemispheres speaking to one another, and that should be avoided at all costs. Okay. All right. So to come full circle, freedom of speech is incredibly complicated. This is just a very small preview. There are only 2 countries that have this that I perceive recognize the value of the free exchange of ideas. The United States is being one of them. And so this is an argument for the First Amendment, but then also it's a word of caution that the federal government has not been the one getting in the way of the free exchange of ideas. It's almost as though the citizens of the United States are imposing problems or imposing stickiness between synapses on their own accord. They're doing it to themselves. And so the idea is to stop doing that. Okay? All right. Oh, I guess I do have one more important idea to communicate.